This is a generic monthly energy bill that many of you are likely familiar with. You'd likely groan at its arrival every month. But what are you actually paying for? Let's start by looking at the general trends of energy pricing in the United States over the last decade or so. As you can see in this graph, electricity prices have been steadily increasing. You might think that this price increase is a direct result of our increased energy use, but it's not. The reality is a bit more complicated than that. In most industries, price is set by competition. If a cup of coffee, for example, costs $2 at one store, another store might charge a little less to attract more business. The existence of both businesses keeps the price hovering around $2. They can't charge too much less than that, though, or they wouldn't cover their expenses. However, most US states have utility systems that allow only one company to sell electricity or gas in a given location. This is called a monopoly. Basically, one company doesn't have to compete with other companies to maintain low prices. The state governments allow utility companies to have a monopoly and to propose their own ideas of what the state energy needs look like and how much that's going to cost. The state government does ultimately set energy prices, but their decisions are based on the proposals of the energy companies. But how do they come up with this price? And what are we really paying for? Utility companies determine a price for energy ahead of time, meaning that they estimate how much money they need from their customers in order to keep making a profit. They generally assume about a 2.5 increase in energy use by the public every year. But what if our energy use as a society actually goes down? Our rates, the price of an energy unit, can still go up. That's because we're not just paying for the energy that we use. Based on the information given by the energy companies, state governments use an equation to set the price of energy. This sort of equation is very complicated. However, when you boil it down to its most basic form, we can think about it like this. When determining the price we pay for energy companies first consider all of their annual expenses. Their expenses cover things like the cost of fuels, including coal and natural gas, employee salaries, as well as some things we might not think of, like flying their executives in private jets. Next, they factor in the price of infrastructure, like building new power plants and lines and repairing existing ones. Energy infrastructure is expensive, and as you can see, it's everywhere in the United States. Infrastructure for fossil fuels is large and expensive, which means that the companies rely heavily on investors to build these plants. In order to attract these investors, utilities also come up with their profit margin for the year. This profit is designed to reward investors, as well as to keep attracting new investors in order for the company to grow and build more power plants and other infrastructure. The utilities will continue to make a profit on each part of their infrastructure as they produce more energy over time. Building infrastructure for coal, nuclear, and natural gas production means high profit for the companies, because they are such large, investment-heavy projects. In this current setup, there's less incentive to push for clean energy options. Clean energy projects are often numerous small projects, which ends up being a lot less profitable for utilities than a few big power plants. Next in our equation, companies look at the lifespan of their infrastructure, or how long they predict each plant or power line will last after construction. What they don't tell us is that they often extend this predicted lifespan by continuing to use plants that should have been shut down, which means they ask for more money from the state governments to repair and update these old plants, a cost that is reflected in our utility bills. Finally, companies divide all of this information by how much energy they predict their customers will actually use. What does this really mean? It means that in the past few decades, the top number has increased because of high fuel costs and costs of building and maintaining a lot of big, expensive, polluting power plants, much faster than the bottom number, which represents the energy we're actually using. So even if our energy use isn't going up by very much, or even if it's going down, the top number keeps increasing rapidly, and so does the price of energy. Utility companies lack financial incentives to run things the cheapest way for their customers. Instead, their interests lie in building conventional infrastructure, since this is how they are guaranteed to make money. It's important that we know the reality of this system, so that we can be empowered energy citizens and speak up for our rights when our public utility commissions are making important decisions about our energy companies. This formula can make it seem like this is the only way for us to get reliable energy and for the energy companies to still make reasonable profits. But it's important to remember that people invented this system, and people can change it. The energy utility system has worked this way for a long time. We're all used to it. It's familiar and comfortable, but it isn't sustainable and it isn't in our best interest. Instead, the formula could be redesigned to incentivize other options, such as community-based clean energy options. So I know that's a lot of information to take in a few minutes, but if you remember anything from this video, remember this. Energy bills are not a direct reflection of the amount of energy that we use. They also include the cost of building infrastructure, which, as we saw, isn't always necessary. Utility companies have an economic interest in investing in infrastructure for coal, nuclear, and natural gas sources of energy, more than for investing in clean energy sources, because conventional infrastructure is more expensive, which means they get more money from their customers. As energy users and communities, we're currently on the hook for paying for the energy system that the utility companies have constructed, whether this is the best system for us or not. But guess what? There's some good news in all of this, because there are a ton of great people working on this issue right now. So learn more, take action, and get involved.